In today's episode, stuff doesn't work, there's smoke, more tender deconstruction, and other stuff doesn't work.
Hi, it's nice to see you again, although I cannot see you. We're picking up right where we were last time. We're cutting up the other part of the bow and lowering the largest sections. For these, the telehandler couldn't help, so it was quite nerve-wracking and risky, and we were worried that we might damage the hull. No cooking in this episode. We would like to do that in the next one, so let us know if you would like that. We're also going to tell about the morning that we got a wake-up call from a very angry truck driver who had a near miss between the train and our container.
In the previous video, we already showed that we cut through most of the wood, except some small parts to keep it stable, and drilled lifting holes in the center of gravity. Now we're attaching the hull sections to the telehandler with slings to secure it for when all the last attached bits are cut and the panel is no longer stabilized by the frames. We removed the most forward triangle-looking frame and made sure that the panel was not stuck to the more rounded next one. Here you see me yanking the frame to check if no more hidden screws or epoxy joints were left. First I had to change saws as the battery powered one was done. There was also a beefy screw initially.
Er zit natuurlijk een schroef.
I'm still not quite sure what made cutting this remaining part so difficult. There was just a little bit of compression, but the blade dulled fast and there was definitely something hard in the wood. I now had to cut the last bit on top of the hull, which kept the bow connected to the rest. Yeah, imagine how slow this all really was without the magic of editing. The wooden beam at the top, which I cut lengthwise, is called a keelson. The support frames have a cutout for it, so the remaining half of the keelson hooked behind the cutout. But this was difficult to assess because it could also be stuck by epoxy or another leftover screw.
Niet dat hij nog vast zit, maar het is gewoon puur dat hij daar klemt.
Nou, dan til je hem mee omhoog.
Klaar met zijn aan.
Nee, een klein stukje omhoog.
Ja, maar naar voren kan ik niet meer. Ik zet één groot ten einde.
Ja, alleen heb ik naar boven nu.
It was the morning of our container delivery. Beforehand, as we couldn't be there during the delivery, we made sure together with the place we bought the container from to coordinate everything really well. We explained them the situation with the narrow road, the tight turn to get on it, the crossing and the train track, and what road to use if he needed more space, and even made and emailed them a map with markings for the truck driver, also to show where the container needed to be placed. All would be fine, they assured us. At around 7 in the morning, we got a phone call from a very angry driver. The first thing he said was that a train had almost hit him. Apparently no map or instructions were provided to him. He came from the opposite direction and decided to make a 3-point turn using the railroad crossing for the container trailer, and apparently right then a train was approaching. Then he was not able to offload the container where it had to be placed, and he was about to leave again, container and all, and made it sound like it was our fault. So we called Giovanni, and luckily his father was able to go there immediately to help us out yet again. So we specifically ordered a green container. Yeah. It looked like shit and the inside reeked of old rubber. Later we learned that Giovanni even used his forklift to drag the container in place. We're skipping forward a bit here.
Slow motion steering.
We borrowed an airless paint sprayer for that. There must have been old paint bits inside the machine, which unfortunately kept clogging the nozzle. As said, the container had to be green, and we were looking at camouflage nets and other solutions to make it less apparent. We'll show you our camouflage artwork in another episode, but we started off with the color of grass. The bow section was lifted and then had to go over the deck and be moved next to the other bow section by the wall. Once it was lifted free from the hull, the frame had to be removed so the telehandler could swing it over the deck. Because the ground outside was uneven and the hydraulic drive system of the telehandler a bit jerky, Giovanni had a challenging responsibility to maneuver as smooth as possible. It was also the first test to see how the bonded wood of this smaller piece held up to being under bending forces perpendicular to the strip direction, but fortunately it held up fine without scary cracking noises. I did my best stabilizing the section as much as possible to prevent it from swinging.
Kun je dat houden?
Ja.
Ah, die gaan nog een beetje van onderop korten.
Ja. Dat die...
Ja. Kom maar van boven.
Once it was on the ground, it still had to be pushed against the wall. We placed it next to the first bow section, gave it a quick wobble test and it stayed upright just fine.
Ja, die blijft zo staan. Zo. Zo. Helemaal.
We know that on video it doesn't seem like much, but it was a tense moment and at that point the hull also suddenly looked very different. The next section is much bigger and much heavier, and the telehandler couldn't reach that one because the shed was too narrow and the deck was in the way to drive in far enough. So for that part we would need a different solution. The next day we went back to the hull. The gate in the background could not be closed and the shed wasn't lockable. Given how desolated this terrain was, we felt that putting a lock on the container would just act like an advertisement. So we had to load and unload all of our stuff in and out the car and shed every day, on top of the 3 to 4 hours of driving. The bow was a relatively small piece. The next section was 12 meters long. To keep things watchable, we're showing you the cutting we did per individual section, while in reality we did all the cutting in one go, but that would become too monotonous to watch. We kept switching between the circular saw and the reciprocating saw for the keelson. Just like with the bow, we left some parts connected on purpose. Because the telehandler couldn't reach far enough to get to the center of gravity of the long section, we devised a method with a rope. So we drilled holes again, attached slings, and then looped the rope as if it went through pulley blocks. The idea was to lower the cut section in a controlled way by giving it small pushes while gradually letting out the line, and let friction of the rope act as a brake.
Dat komt goed.
Hij is al kapot, dus...
Dat is al iets dat van kapot is, dat is wel niet.
There was also an immense amount of pointy epoxy drippings on the inside of the hull, very strong, sharp and rock hard. The same drippings caused partial attachment to the frames and the remaining hidden screw here and there. We haven't filmed how sick I sometimes got from disturbing the wood dust in the shed. Luckily I've never developed epoxy sensitivity, but the cedar dust caused snot to drip out of the exhaust valve on my mask. I stuck little bits of wood between the frame and skin to create space and to see what was left to unstuck, and when that was done, between the skins to keep it raised above the bottom section. This is the DAF Museum in Eindhoven, the Netherlands. Not too far from where we live, and with DAF being a large part of the Dutch automotive history, we were thinking about visiting it for years already, but never really had a reason to. But that has changed because of the boat.
So sparkly.
That comes straight from the bridge.
In the previous episode, we showed you our Mercedes OM606 and explained why it's going to be our generator. This meant we had to find a different propulsion engine, but we decided semi-truck or city bus sized. A lot of Dutch and Belgian city buses use an underfloor engine so they can use all internal space while keeping the floor very low, which also makes a lot of sense for a pilot house sailboat. A low and heavy centrally positioned engine under the floor or sole increases stability and leaves more headroom in a pilot house. Experts warned us about reliability issues with the more common Mercedes and Volvo underfloor engines, so we went with a made in Holland DAF engine. This red museum piece is the 8.65 liter or 530 cubic inch inline 6-cylinder DAF GS 245M underfloor engine. 245 is the power in kilowatt, it's about 330 horsepower.
Yeah.
We thought it's really cool that this engine is on display and took the opportunity to make some technical photos. These engines are extremely rare, but luck had it that a GS 160M was for sale fairly close to us. The 160 is identical to the 245, it shares all the same strong internal components and part numbers, with the only difference being the smaller injection pump displacement. Knowing that ensures us that our engine really is bulletproof. The engine we found was an exchange unit, meaning it had been fully stripped and rebuilt by DAF itself, but never used afterwards. At the time we picked up the DAF engine, we didn't have our own trailer yet, or a usable car with trailer hitch, so we borrowed a trailer and rented a van.
Getting the engine out.
First time seeing the engine in proper daylight was a little disappointing. It looked much less like the pictures.
Yay!
And I think my face tells the whole story here. The new green paint was flaking off all over with corrosion here and there. When we initially visited the engine pre-buying, it was on a rainy late afternoon in the dark of winter, when it was stored in a difficult to access trailer. It was cramped and I had to climb in it. This made it hard to see such details at the time, and we kept it stored there for another 6 months. They loaded the trailer for us, and I brake checked the trailer brakes and to see if it would slide under normal conditions. Then I strapped it, mostly to prevent it from landing in my neck during an emergency stop. This thing weighs close to a metric ton.
Looking a little less nice than we thought.
Then a short trip back home through Dutch traffic. Once we got home, our nice neighbor helped us unload it with his forklift.
Every engine needs a starter. Usually this is a DC electrical motor, but you can also wind up a spring and then release all that stored energy in one go with a lever. We will be traveling where there's a lot of lightning, and lightning strikes high carbon fiber masts. I want to be able to start that engine always, also when the batteries are dead or the other systems have failed, to charge those, or the starter motor wore down. Obviously I can have a spare starter motor. We might even have that on board. Something purely mechanical, manually powered. Well, if I don't work anymore, I don't really need the boat anymore, right?
I had found a brand new spring starter for sale in about the right size.
Aantal tanden is hetzelfde.
Oh. It's for an entirely different engine, but it was a great deal, so I bought it. Now, having the engine home, first thing I wanted to do was to see how far off we are with the interface.
Nee. Gaat er niet worden.
Quite far, but we'll be able to fix that. The next thing I was curious about. Nice, that means the piston rings didn't seize to the cylinder walls. Because we don't know how long it has been stored in a humid, cold environment. Then I tucked it in for the night. This was weirdly satisfying, so I started recording it. Unfortunately, I didn't win anything with this large scratch-off. I decided that before storing it, I wanted to remove the loose paint bits as much as possible. During cleanup, I remembered that I have a strong pressure washer. And then I had a broken pressure washer. Good enough, time to tuck it in for a very long hibernation. footage you see now is quite recent, filmed after having the engine stored this way for about 2 years. During those years we moved the engine into the corner with a pallet jack. One of the developments is that we now have more storage space in a container, and it is finally time to relocate the engine there. Our neighbor let us borrow his forklift. It became apparent that because of a large block of wood in the base of this abnormal pallet, the forks could not be inserted where you would expect them to go. This is because in the process of moving it with the pallet jack, we also rotated it a quarter turn apparently. So I attempted to shift it around a bit, but that didn't help. Then I put little blocks underneath it so the forks could get underneath entirely. We took the tarp off and things didn't look much worse than before, although there were a lot of spiders. In the previous episode we scanned the hull, and before bringing the DAF motor into storage we wanted to make a scan of that as well. We have an old but decent Artec MHT 3D scanner. It is 2 scanners in one. Primarily it is a structured light scanner. So it uses a flash bulb to project a pattern of known squiggly lines, which then get picked up with a stereoscopic pair of webcams. Second, it uses a large LED flasher to make pictures of the surface texture and color. Both of these registrations are used by the software to create a point cloud and then a mesh. It was a bit unfortunate that the sun was very bright, because that makes it harder for the scanner to capture objects properly. But fortunately, the scan was good enough. We now also have our own trailer and it was time to load it. The forklift truck has a clutch that intermittently turns quite grabby like in a race car. This happens mostly when in reverse, but the drivetrain and clutch sometimes also jerk a little in forward gear. I tried idle and raised RPMs, but it didn't make that much of a difference. Funnily enough, the street surface could be felt moving up and down when the forklift and load started bouncing a bit. You can really see here just how incredibly flat this engine is. Once we got to the container, Ad used his forklift to help us with unloading. We'll explain more about our storage setup later, but let's just say that we now own more containers than we ever expected.
Dat is een beetje breed, hè?
Back to the hull. From the inside we started pushing and the section began creeping over the hull underneath it. There was considerable flex and drag. This meant that I had to crawl back and forth over and under 11 frames to lift and push the ends of the section. For your reference, this section weighs a little under 400 kilos or like 850 pounds. In between the pushes, we had to ease the line a little bit at a time, then go back in again, ducking, climbing and doing the whole thing over and over. The nasty noise you hear is the epoxy remnants catching and scraping the soft and smooth wood of the whole section below.
Ja, gaat goed. Ja, ik ben bijna bij de grond.
The next step was placing it against the wall, as it wasn't yet time to place it into the container. We used the same method with the rope and ran the line from the slings up to the steel structures of the shed. Then removed the safety line.
Ja.
Unfortunately, the friction that helped us lowering the part in a controlled and safe way was now working against us, and a pulley would have been very useful here. Then came the actual tipping point. We wanted to let it topple over as calmly as possible and not have it slide away.
Heel veel rustig houden als je kunt.
Finally, we secured it in place with straps. We're making a temporary jump in time again to when the now filled container was picked up for transporting. We feel the storytelling is more interesting this way, but we'll get right back to the deconstruction after. We had been driving around the town of Puurs asking different companies if they had a truck-mounted crane that could lift our container onto a trailer. Eventually we found someone with a nice rig and passed on the dimensions and weight, which we estimated to be around 8 metric tons, with the hull being under 4 and close to 4 more for the container. The crane truck could lift plenty at the required reach. Positioning the truck had to be carefully done so the load wouldn't be too far away, and so the container could be placed onto a trailer in one go. The trailer was already ordered, driving there from the Netherlands. The operator attached the lifting chains and started lifting. That is the crane's overload alarm. He tried again. But no go. It turned out to be considerably heavier than our estimation. At that point we were starting to worry we were about to hear that we needed to call an entirely different company for the job. But to lower the moment arm as much as possible, the operator carefully pulled the container closer to the truck. These cranes don't have much dynamic slewing power, so we had to do it in a lot of little static lift steps. Another attempt. Now we definitely started losing hope. The trailer truck nearby, the crane not able to lift the container, and everything must be paid. Then it was time for the symmetrical hull section on the other side. This time we routed the rope through slings attached to the metal roof structure of the shed. We made the final saw cuts. But on the inside there was again a huge amount of epoxy between the frames and the hull that had to be sawn and chipped away. And now you can see well how many frames there were. All of them glued to the hull, every single one of them, and more hidden screws. This section was unbelievably stuck to those frames, and we really had to take care not to destroy anything, levering it with the crowbars. We're only showing you a very small percentage of all the work. It really felt like it would never be over. I managed to stab myself in the shoulder and head a few times with pointy epoxy. It was a total bitch. So we just kept sawing, moving the leather, wedging a crowbar in, moving the leather again, adding little wooden spacers, moving the leather again, realizing we forgot to saw, crawling back through all the frames again, meanwhile trying not to fall through the holes for the winches or hatches in the floor or ceiling, depending on your perspective. Anyways, the section was then freed and time to move it.
Het wordt heel spannend, want hij moet een heel stuk schuiven voordat
Dat hij echt gaat hangen.
So I pushed and pushed until it started moving.
Ik voel dat dit een heel slecht idee is. We zijn ook wel een beetje te laat. Dus dat is...
We looped the rope to create additional friction points. Just in case the section would suddenly fall over, we could easily hold it. Don't let the wobbliness deceive you, this part weighs as much as a grand piano. To have an additional layer of control until the ceiling slings and the rope were taut in straight lines, I added the orange straps, which made it easier to keep the section horizontal as well. I noticed that pulling on the rope caused the section to lift in a way that initiated a slide. So when everything was straight, I undid the straps and hung on the rope with my full weight.
Vond je het leuk?
Alright, let's see if I can get my shit together so we can get this over with in one take. For anyone still sticking around and only watching here for the boat, the video is over. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Maybe there's something else interesting on our channel already. If you want to learn a little bit more about us and our video or YouTubing experience, stick around. In case it hasn't been absolutely clear, we are not the type of people that has aspired to become online personas or do stuff with social media. Neither of us feels comfortable in front of a camera, and we get super awkward, like now. The awkwardness only increases when other people are watching us, being pretend influencers or something. Or at least that's what they must be thinking. The intro in the woods has been shot like 40 times until we were satisfied. And I, for the life of me, still cannot smile on cue. Actually, the opposite happens when you tell me to smile, so yeah. The idea has always been to just make cool videos for ourselves when we're old, and also so we have something coherent to send to our friends and family, else we would just be sending like little updates on WhatsApp to many people every time, which gets old quite quickly. The YouTube project has been rough and challenging. There are so many things that we had to learn that we were unaware of being absolutely necessary. It wasn't cheap either. The equipment and software was expensive, but the amount of time that goes into producing these videos is off the charts. It's all on top of the actual massive project on itself. Because of this, we would like the channel to grow, not because we want to become online personas, but because it's otherwise just not worth investing this much time in these videos if not many people are watching it and enjoying it. Simply because there is so much more stuff to do that is more important than editing. I absolutely hate asking for favors, and I really don't like to be dependent on other people. So I'm not going to ask for a favor, but I do have something really important to explain. YouTube analytics show us that the majority of you watch this on a TV and are from a demographic whose world doesn't revolve solely around a mobile phone. This is great. This is actually perfect and exactly what we hoped for, but it is a problem. If you're one of these awesome people still watching me ramble after watching nearly an hour of our stuff, I want you to become aware of something. The black box that is called the YouTube algorithm decides like a Roman emperor if a gladiator should live or die. Same with the videos. It only pushes a video to a larger audience if it gets sufficient watch time, but also if it gets great interaction, so comments and all that. Now, what is the problem? The problem is that you're watching on a TV. It isn't really frictionless to transition from a TV to a mobile phone to leave a reply. This is really a disadvantage to us. Unlike a cat and dog video that is watched on a phone on the toilet, you already helped us with the watch time, but consider the impact you could make for the growth of our channel if you would actually switch over and leave a reply with your phone. If you don't really know what to write, we would actually love to learn where you are from, what weekday and time of day you're watching this, so we can adjust for that. If you're motivated to do even more, check out the links in our video description to our website or our Patreon. We've already had a few people supporting us, and you wouldn't believe how incredibly motivating that is to us. To these people, thank you so much. Thank you for joining our 2-person DIY video production crew. Bye-bye. Het zit vol met mugjes en vliegen.